The rain started around midnight. I remember because my phone lit up with a weather alert, and that was the last normal thing that happened that night. I was alone in my apartment, third floor. The building was mostly empty. Half the units were still unrented, and my nearest neighbor had left for a work trip 2 days before. I liked the quiet. I had grown used to it. That night, I would learn there is a difference between quiet and silence is the one you should be afraid of. I had been lying on my couch with a book when I heard it. 3 slow knocks on my front door. Not frantic, not loud, just 3 measured, patient knocks, like someone who had all the time in the world. I didn't move at first. It was past midnight. I wasn't expecting anyone. I told myself it was probably a neighbor who had the wrong door, or maybe someone who had been buzzed into the building by mistake. People do that. It happens. I stayed on the couch and waited. 30 seconds passed, then 3 more knocks. Same rhythm, same patience. I got up and walked to the door. I looked through the peephole and saw nothing. Just the empty yellow hallway, the stained carpet, the door to the utility closet across from me. I pressed my ear against the door and listened. Rain against the windows, the hum of the heating vent, nothing else. I went back to my couch. 3 more knocks. This time I opened the door fast, thinking I would catch whoever it was. The hallway was empty, both directions. The elevator light wasn't on. The stairwell door at the far end was still, its small square window dark. Whoever had knocked would have had to disappear in under 2 seconds. There was nowhere to go that fast. I closed and locked the door. I put the chain on. I stood in my kitchen and told myself there was a rational explanation. Old buildings make sounds, pipes expand, walls settle. I believed none of it. For the next hour, the knocking came every 10 to 15 minutes. Always 3 knocks, always the same slow, deliberate rhythm. I stopped answering the door. I sat in my bedroom with the lights on and my phone in my hand. The rain was heavier now, beating hard against the glass, and each time it got louder, the knocking somehow cut right through it. Around 2 in the morning, it stopped. I almost felt relieved. I told myself it was over. I got up to get a glass of water and walked through my dark living room, and that is when I saw the shadow under my door. 2 feet, standing just outside, still, not moving, not knocking, just standing there in the space between the door and the floor, the yellow hallway light interrupted by the shape of 2 feet pointed directly toward me. I did not move. I did not breathe. I stood in my living room in the dark and stared at those 2 shadows, and they stared back at me. The rain hammered the windows. The heating vent hummed. A full minute passed, maybe more. Then the feet turned slowly, like someone turning around without rushing, and they walked away down the hall, the shadows shifting and shrinking until they were gone. I did not sleep that night. When morning came, I opened my door and looked at the hallway floor. There were no footprints, no marks, nothing. But on my door, at eye level, right in the center of the wood, there were 3 small gouges, like fingernails, like someone standing very close to my door had dragged their fingers slowly down the surface, not hard enough to make sound, just hard enough to leave a mark. They were not there the night before. I know because I had painted that door myself 3 weeks earlier. The building manager told me the hallway cameras had been offline for maintenance. I moved out the following month. My new apartment is on the ground floor. I told myself that made me feel safer. But lately, around midnight when the rain starts, I find myself staring at the gap beneath my front door. And sometimes, I think about how whatever was standing outside my old apartment that night didn't knock to get in. It knocked to let me know it was there.
I drive a rural mail route. Have for 6 years. I know every road, every curve, every farmhouse and broken fence on a 60-mile stretch of county highway. I know which roads flood and which ones hold. I know where the dead zones are on my phone, and I know exactly how long each road feels in the dark. You learn a route the way you learn a face. After long enough, you notice when something is wrong. It was a Wednesday in late October. I had worked a double because a colleague called in sick, which meant I was finishing my second route at almost 11 at night. The rain had been falling since noon, not violent, just relentless, the kind that turns gravel roads to mud and makes everything beyond your headlights vanish into gray nothing. I was on County Road 9, about 14 miles from the nearest town, when my radio cut to static. I want to be clear about this road. I have driven it hundreds of times. The radio always works on County Road 9. There's a tower less than 2 miles from it. The static didn't fade in the way a signal fades when you lose range. It snapped. 1 second it was a country station. The next it was nothing but white noise, loud enough that I turned the knob down to almost zero. I didn't think much of it. I kept driving. About a mile further, my headlights caught something on the side of the road. A car, pulled halfway into the gravel shoulder, hazard lights going. I slowed down. It was a dark sedan, engine off, both front doors closed. I couldn't see anyone inside. I stopped about 20 feet back. I sat there with my wipers going and looked at the car. Nothing moved. The hazards blinked in the rain. Orange, 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 like a slow pulse. I rolled my window down and listened. Rain on the roof, the wipers, and my radio turned down low, still hissing static. I should have driven past. That's the thing I know now. I should have called it in on my phone, which still had 1 bar out there, and driven past. But I had done this route for 6 years, and I knew how far the next house was, almost 4 miles. So I grabbed my flashlight and got out. I walked up to the driver's side and shone the light in. Empty. Both seats empty. No bags, no coffee cup, no sign that anyone had been in that car recently. The seat was dry. If someone had gotten out in this rain and walked somewhere, they would have left the seat wet. It was completely dry. I stepped back from the car. The rain was running down my neck. The hazards kept blinking. I swept my flashlight in a slow arc across the road and the fields on both sides. Flat farmland, unharvested corn on the left, a dead soybean field on the right. My light reached maybe 30 feet before the dark swallowed it. That is when I heard the breathing. I know how that sounds, but it was breathing, slow and even, coming from somewhere behind me, from the direction I had just walked from. Not panicked breathing, not the breathing of someone hurt or afraid. Calm, measured breathing, the kind of sound a person makes when they are simply standing still. I turned around. My flashlight found nothing, just my mail truck 20 feet away, engine running, headlights pushing against the rain. I walked back to my truck faster than I want to admit. I got in and locked the doors and pulled back onto the road. I watched the sedan in my mirrors as I drove away. The hazards kept blinking until I rounded a bend and lost sight of it. I called the county sheriff non-emergency line when I got back in range, gave them the location. They sent someone out. The deputy called me back 40 minutes later. He said there was no car on County Road 9. He had driven the whole length of it. No car, no hazard lights, nothing. I told him I had seen it. He said the road was empty. I have driven County Road 9 maybe 200 times since that night. The radio always works now when I pass that spot. I don't know if that's a comfort. What I do know is that I asked the deputy one more thing before I hung up. I asked him if he had gotten out of his car to check the shoulder carefully. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I stopped and looked, but I didn't get out." He didn't say why. I didn't ask. I think we both already knew.
I want to tell you about the apartment across the street, about the window on the 4th floor, the one that faces mine, about what I saw standing in it for 11 nights in a row. I moved to the city in early spring, small 1-bedroom apartment, 4th floor, good natural light, a view of the building directly across a narrow 2-lane street. The buildings were close, maybe 40 feet between them. Close enough that you could see into the opposite apartments pretty clearly if the lights were on and the blinds were open. Most people kept their blinds closed. I did too, most of the time. The first night I noticed the window, it was raining. I had been at the table near my own window eating dinner, and I happened to look up. The building across the street was mostly dark. It was late, maybe 11 o'clock. One window had a blue television glow, one had a lamp, and one, directly across from mine on the same floor, was completely dark, but had its blinds open. I almost didn't see it. It was the shape that caught me. A figure, standing just behind the glass, completely still. No light on in the room, so I could only see the outline, the shoulders, the head, the approximate height of a tall person, standing and facing my window. I told myself it was a coat rack, a lamp, something that looked like a person. I got up and closed my blinds and forgot about it. The next night I was at my window again. The rain had come back, softer this time. I looked across the street without thinking about it, and the window was dark again, and the shape was there again. Same position, same stillness. Over the following week I began to pay attention. Every night around 10 or 11, I would look at that window. Some nights, the room behind the glass was so dark I couldn't be sure I was seeing anything at all. But on the nights when there was enough light, a street lamp, the glow from nearby windows, the occasional lightning flash, I could see it, the figure, standing at the glass, always in the same spot, always completely still. I started testing it. I would leave my blinds half open and sit far back in my room in the dark, watching. The figure never moved. It never shifted weight. It never looked down at a phone or turned its head. It just stood there with a patience that felt less like waiting and more like watching. On the 8th night, I did something I shouldn't have. I turned on my brightest lamp and stood directly in front of my window and looked straight at the figure across the street. I wanted to see it clearly. I wanted it to be a coat rack. For a moment, nothing happened. We stood there, the figure and I, 40 feet apart with rain falling between us. Then it raised one hand, slowly. Not a wave, just a hand rising to about shoulder height and stopping there. I stepped back from the window. My heart was going fast. I stood in the middle of my apartment and thought about what to do. I grabbed my phone and took a picture through the glass. The flash lit the rain and the street and the building across from me. I looked at the photo. The window was dark. The room behind it was empty. No figure, nothing. I looked up from my phone. The figure was back, standing in the window, hand still raised. I closed my blinds and did not open them for 3 days. On the 11th night, a rainstorm came through that was bad enough to wake me up. Thunder, lightning, the kind of rain that sounds like something is breaking. I got up at 2 in the morning to make sure my window was latched, and in the light of a lightning strike, I looked across the street without meaning to. The window was empty for the first time. The room behind it was dark and still, and there was no figure standing at the glass. And then I looked down. On the street below, standing on the sidewalk directly in front of my building in the pouring rain, was a figure, looking up, completely still. The lightning flashed again, and for just a moment I saw it clearly. Tall, pale, face turned upward toward my window. And even in that half-second of light, the thing I could not explain, the thing that made me back away from the glass and sit on my bathroom floor until sunrise, was this. It had no expression, not a blank expression, not a calm one, just a smooth, flat face, the way you would describe a face to someone who had never seen one before and did not quite understand what a face was for. The next morning, it was gone. I asked my building manager about the apartment across the street. He made a call. He told me that unit had been vacant for over a year. No one had been living there. I still think about the way it raised its hand, not to wave, not to threaten, just to show me it had seen me first.